Top. Okay, so at the top of worksheet 12, it says warm up. And we have 2 sine 3x minus 1. What things are going on here? The amplitude is 2. The b value is just the number out of the equation, which is 3, but that tells us that the period is what? 2 pi over whatever that is, which is 3. The vertical shift at the back? Down 1. All right. So if you want to rename this midline y equals negative 1, you can. I'm going to actually draw it down here. All right. So where are all the maximums at? The amplitude is 2, so 2 units above that is 1. That's where all my maxes are going to be. This is negative 1. And all my minimums are going to be 2 units below that, which is going to be at negative 3. Okay? I like to draw myself little boundaries so I don't go out of bounds. Okay. Then it is a sine graph, so it starts where? It normally starts at the origin. It starts always at the midline, yes? So it's going to start at the midline here because we don't have a phase shift, so it doesn't go left or right. And it's going to go what first? Up. And where it ends over here is 2 pi over 3, yes? And then we talked about quarter points. How do you find quarter points? You take the period and divide it by 4. Okay, now this is going to come into play today when we start talking about phase shifts because it's going to get even messier, but dividing by 4 is multiplying by 1/4, so we get 2 pi over 12, which is pi over 6. Everybody good? So, because we don't have a phase shift, the first maximum here occurs at pi over 6. It crosses the midline at 2 pi over 6. What's 2 6? 1/3. Then it has a minimum at 3 pi over 6. What's 3 6? And then it finishes at 4 pi over 6, which is 2/3. We good? Okay, so this ordered pair was over 0 down 1. This was pi over 6, 1. This one was pi over 3, negative 1. The minimum down here is at pi over 2, negative 3. And then we're at 2 pi over 3, negative 1. I do anything wrong? Anybody disagree? Questions? Domain and range. Don't put down that the domain is 0 to 2 pi over 3, okay? We only drew that much, but remember this graph does go on, okay? So the range, or the domain is infinity, but the range for this particular one is negative 3 to positive 1, yes? Square brackets, yep. Any questions or concerns about that? All right. So we need to be really comfortable with that the A out here is the amplitude, that the B is whatever's multiplied either inside or outside the parentheses. Okay? And the vertical shift is D, which is added or subtracted onto either the front or the back, as long as it's being added or subtracted. The phase shift that we're going to start talking about today, if you do not have factored form, you do a phase shift of opposite of C divided by B. If you have factored form, the phase shift is just opposite of C. Can I explain that real quick? Factor out a 6. What do you get? Okay. This was multiplying to put it back in, dividing to pull it out, yes? So if it's not factored, I have to divide by B to pull it out and put it in factored form, okay? The amplitude, if you are writing a graph, which we're not going to get to today, again, is max minus min divided by 2. The vertical shift is the average of the maxes and the mins. And the vertical shift is also where the midline is. We're going to talk about frequency later. Okay, it's going to ask questions about frequency. The frequency is the reciprocal of the period. Okay, I don't think it's on a test or quiz, but it's the reciprocal of the period for the homework questions. Okay, I can put it on a test or quiz. Okay, to graph a sinusoidal function one more time, you add pi over 4 to the left endpoint. No, not pi over 4. The period divided by 4. You add the period divided by 4 to the leftmost endpoint to find your quarter points. Okay? This was on yesterday's notes, but I'm going over this again. Okay, here we go. Okay. Actually, this one is nicer than it seems. It's a nice first problem with a phase shift because what's the amplitude? The B value, pi. So the period is 2 pi divided by pi, which is 2. So when we go to label our x-axis, it's not going to have pi's on it at all for this problem, okay? The phase shift is in factored form already. So this is just the shift, which is what? Right? 1/2. And does this one have a vertical shift? There's no plus or minus on the back or out in front, something plain old, plus 5 or minus 7 or something. All right, it is a cosine, so it's going to start at its max and come back to its max. But that's going to start at 1/2, right? Okay, so we're going to start 1/2 to the right. Where are all the maxes going to be? Okay, the maxes are going to be at 3 and the mins are going to be at -3. It doesn't have a vertical shift up or down. And it's going to start at 1/2. And I'm going to go ahead and draw it because I like to label after the fact. Okay, I don't know where it's crossing here. I got to think about that in a minute. But what is the entire length from here to where it ends? It's supposed to be 2. Okay, what do we always do to that to find quarter points? Take the period divided by 4, which is 1/2. So what does that mean? We started at 1/2. We have to add a half onto that to get the next quarter point, which would be 1. Add a half onto that, which would be the next quarter point, which would be 3/2. Add a half onto that, the next quarter point is 2. And that means it finishes 2 units after a half, which would be 2.5 or 5/2. So the period divided by 4 and added on to the shift, okay, will give us those quarter points. All right, so give me the ordered pairs real fast. Somebody? 1/2, 3. 1, 0. 3/2, -3. 2, 0, and 5/2, 3. Now, what does that mean should actually happen when I go backwards? If I were to go back, this should actually go through the origin, shouldn't it? Because the quarter point is half a unit this way. So we actually could have written another equation for this and it would have been a sine graph. Okay. Domain -infinity to infinity, range -3 to 3. Any questions? Hey, that would be the end of the easy ones. I'm thinking. I could be wrong. I don't know what the next one looks like. We good? Okay. So tell me one thing, Fatih, anything about all these blanks. Amplitude is 2. What does the negative do? Amplitude is always positive, remember? Yes, reflect over x before we do the vertical shift. So basically it's going to have a shape of starting at the midline and going down, right? Because it's a sine graph. Everybody good? All right. Melanie, tell me something, anything. Okay. There's nothing in here, so the period is still 2 pi. Okay, you got something for me? Okay. Up 1. Oh, I already put the shape. It should be doing this. Oh, that's wrong. It's a sine graph, but it's negative. Phase shift, anybody? Right, pi over 4. And the midline? Yes, it's just the vertical shift, so it's actually y = 1, right? Because it's a horizontal line. Okay. So there's my midline at y = 1. The amplitude is 2, so all the maxes are at what? 3, yes? And the mins are 2 below 1, which would be at -1. Okay. When we go back here, guys, I really don't care that you accurately went back to 0, 0. Because some of you wouldn't have figured that out, right? That going backwards might have made this go. As long as you give me this one period with 5 accurate points, I'm going to be okay. All right? Because what I'm trying to help you see is that the fact that this shifts right pi over 4, I don't really care where you tell me that is. So somewhere it goes to the right pi over 4. And then I'm going to draw the shape. Starts at the midline, goes down, comes back, goes up, comes down. Okay. Now, some of you are going to really struggle with this, the phase shift part. So what I'm going to do real quick is pretend it didn't have a phase shift. If it didn't have a phase shift, guys, and the period was 2 pi, this spot right here would be 2 pi, right? And this spot in the middle would have been 1 pi. But everything's been shifted what? To the right pi over 4. So instead of being to the right 0, this is to the right pi over 4. Instead of being at pi, it's moved to the right pi over 4. So what is pi plus pi over 4 to get that spot right there? Type 1 plus 1/4. If you don't know, leave the pi out, right? 1 plus 1 divided by 4 is? Okay. This was 2 pi. We're supposed to finish, but it's shifted to the right pi over 4. So what's 2 pi plus pi over 4? Leave out the pi. So 2 plus 1 divided by 4. Math, enter, enter is 9 pi over 4. All right. Now we're supposed to figure out, what was the period again, guys? 2 pi. If we had done quarter points to find our quarter points, what would that be? Period divided by 4 gives you quarter points of every pi over 2, yes? So you should be adding pi over 2 onto this. What's 1/4 plus pi over 2? I'm sorry, what's pi over 4 plus pi over 2? Or 1/4 plus 1/2? 3/4. So where it hit the min here should be 3/4. I know my sketch in green is really bad. So 1/4, 3/4, 5/4. What's the missing one right up here? 7/4. The dotted one was just to try to help you see. And honestly, on the quiz, if you want to draw it, the original one without a phase shift, and then just take and shift all your points over a little bit and redraw it, I'm all good with that. Yep. You can, as long as that helps you. Yep. If you want to call this line pi over 4 and you can relabel all your points accurately, I'm okay with that. All right, so the ordered pairs were pi over 4, 1, 3 pi over 4, -1, 5 pi over 4, 1, 7 pi over 4, 3, and I don't think I can scoot this over, 9 pi over 4, 1, right? That's the tiniest little squeezed in there. So the range was -1 to 3. How we doing? Horrified? All right, we just got to practice. All right, number 3. Let's go ahead and put in a parenthesis. See how it has 2 at the end? I want to do this as an unfactored one so we can practice one more time. Okay. So put in a parenthesis here. Everybody see what I'm talking about? So as a factored, I said unfactored, as a factored problem. It's already factored out for us. We'll do some that aren't in a minute, but I want to do one more that is. So because it had 2 at the end, it was missing 1 somewhere, so put it in there. All right, in that form, the amplitude of this one is just what? 1, because there's nothing out front. The b value is 2, so the period is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. The phase shift is again to the right, pi over 4, and the vertical shift is up 3, but what's the shape this time? Cosine, so it starts at its max and comes down and goes back up. Midline? Y equals 3. Okay, so I'm going to call this y equals 3, and it's going to go up 1 and down 1. So the range is 2 to 4. I know I'm going kind of fast. You need me to stop? Okay. So I think I'm just going to draw it first. I'm going to shift it over a little bit and draw it. Okay. It's really badly drawn because the whole period is supposed to only be what? Pi. Let me go down here real quick. If this is a cosine and I want it to finish by pi, then it's quarter points would be at pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. But what have we done with all those? Shift to the right. All right, so the period is pi. So the quarter point thing is you take the period and you divide it by 4 to get the quarter points. And then you have to add on the shift. All right, so our period was pi, divided by 4 is pi over 4. And we're going to add that on to our shift, which was what? Pi over 4. So this is going to be pi over 4. But the next quarter point is pi over 4 after that, which is what? 2 pi over 4 or pi over 2. If we add another one, we get 3 pi over 4, which is this one. Sorry. If we add another one, we get 4 pi over 4, which is what? Pi. And we add another one, we get 5 pi over 4. Does that make sense, guys, that if we started at 1/4, we'd end at 1 1/4 if it has a period of pi? All right. Can I skip writing the quarter points on that graph? Do you got it? Right in the actual ordered pairs. Is everybody okay? I'd rather get to some more practice. All right. This one is unfactored. I would prefer to factor it. And it doesn't matter if you don't factor it. The only thing is you're still going to get the same phase shift. It's just not going to make as much sense, in my opinion. Factoring is doing what? If I have 4x minus 8 and you take out a 4, what do you do to that 8? Divide it by 4, right? Factoring is dividing. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3 sine, sorry, I don't know where there's an equal, sine 1/2 parenthesis, I divided out the 1/2 and get just the x, plus, what is pi if I divide out 1/2? Well, the good news is this is shifted what? Left 2 pi. Oh, that's disgusting. Okay. So the amplitude is 3. The phase shift is left 2 pi. I may have to not use this graph the way it's drawn. B is 1/2. So the period is 2 pi divided by 1/2, or 2 pi times 2 over 1, which is 4 pi. And the vertical shift is down 1, and the shape is a sine graph. And the midline is at y equals -1. All right, I'm going to draw this without graph paper down here for just a second. If I think about shifting the sine to the left, 2 pi, and it has a period of 4 pi, where would I finish? Nope. If it goes to the left to -2 pi when it starts, and it finishes 4 pi later, where would I finish? At 2 pi. Yes? So it looks like this, right? It went left 2 pi, and it has a period of 4 pi. It finishes at +2 pi. It goes through the origin. All right, now I got to go back and do the rest of this, which is to shift it down 1. All right. Its amplitude is 3. If this line is -1, 3 above that would be what, guys? +2. And 3 below that would be, anybody? -4. The amplitude is 3. So these are where the points are still going to be, except they're shifted down. So if I go to the left to -2 pi, and I add 4 pi on to that, I'm going to finish by +2 pi. So I'm trying to make it symmetric here. So it's going to go here, here, and here. What am I going to count by? The period divided by 4 tells me what I'm going to count by added on to the left shift. This is pi's, yes? So if this is -2 pi, the next important point is going to be negative pi, then 0, then positive pi, and 2 pi. All right, so because it's a sine, it starts here, max, min. All right, do you need me to write the ordered pairs for this one or not? Okay, I don't care if you don't write them down. I guess I'll write them while some of you are copying this anyway. Everybody okay? You got it, Sam? Good. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break to do something that you don't have to draw on your own. Okay? So you need a graphing calculator real fast. And we're going to put this in as a list, and we're going to do a regression on our calculator. It says use your sinusoidal function to solve this problem. And I want to use the calculator, okay? The calculator is going to give you an unfactored form, and I would like you to do it in radians. So you need to be in radian mode, okay? So you're going to go to stat, enter, and put these in. Well, how do we put a number in here? Well, it says use 1 equals, okay? This is the average temperature for Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we're going to put in 1, 2, 3 through 12 for this one. I'm not sure where Ann Arbor is. Is it on a lake? Because that makes a difference. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. That's a lot of numbers to type in for Hofbauer. 29, enter. 34, 46, 60, 72, 80, 86, 81, 73, 63. Did I mess up yet? 47 and 33. All right, got them in? Okay. How do we go to look at them first? If we wanted to look at them, first of all, make sure you're in radians, which I'm not. Turn your stat plot on if you want to look at them. Make sure it says list 1 and list 2 and it's on. And then you do a zoom stat, which is 9. Ooh, I have something in my y equals. Anybody get something that look like that? Okay. Turn my stat plot on. Make sure it said list 1 and list 2. And then I did a zoom 9. And I needed to clear out my y equals because I had some garbage in there. Anybody not get in a picture? Okay. Doesn't say we have to sketch the picture. I just wanted you to see it. Okay. What we're really here to do is come up with an equation, which is what? How did you find anything of best fit? Whether it was a line, a quadratic, an exponential regression, we always went stat, right arrow to calculate. Okay. It is going to go all the way down to sine regression, which is choice C. Hit enter. Iterations doesn't matter. I don't even know what it is. Okay. We're going to do, I think it does how many times it tries to fit it best or something. I don't know. We're going to make sure it says list 1 and list 2. We're not going to preset the period. We're going to let it do that. If you want to store it, which I would suggest, okay, it's vars, arrow to the right, okay, calculate. Takes a second, and it gives you a whole huge mess of yuck. Okay. So I am going to go, what are we doing? Temperature equals, it says A times sine BC or BX plus C plus D. So I'm going to round to 2 decimal places for lack of room. 29.06 sine BX would be 0.48x plus C, which is actually minus 1.78 plus D, which is 55.83. Did someone else get those numbers, by the way? I should have asked that first. Okay. If I do look at the graph, it fits very nicely. And we could predict, you know, something 4 years from now in whatever month and do whatever we wanted with that equation. Okay? Any questions from somebody? All right. Is there another example here where it does ask us to predict? This is kind of what I put on the quiz, is one more like this where it doesn't give us the whole year and then I ask you to go ahead and predict something. All right. I'm not going to do this one on the online calculator. I'm just going to do it on mine. So making sure I'm in radians. What does it give us through August, which would be 8? Yes? Yep, use sine regression again. I am going to just sketch a super little... did anybody get, since I didn't do it on the online calculator, did anybody get it and it looks kind of like this after you do a zoom 9? You have to set a new window. Did anybody erase their old stuff and put this in and, okay. Then how do we get there again? Okay, stat. Right arrow over to calculate and down to this sine regression one. All right, it's going to make a pretty big difference whether we save this. If you have an older calculator that doesn't, as long as you use list 1 and list 2, after sine regression, if you just type Y1, it'll save it. Okay? And again, to get that, it's vars, arrow to the right, enter, how many times, guys? Enter, enter. Vars, arrow to the right, enter, enter. And then one more to get it to actually do it, but yes. All right, I have, anybody get 12 sine 0.64x minus 2.86 plus 19.84, roughly? Okay, if you stored it Now, how would you use it to find October? Go to the table and type in x equals 10, or scroll down to 10, depending how you have your table set. I got 15.4 I'm going to go with. And that was thousands of visitors. Are we good? That took entirely too much time. We good? Any questions? I probably didn't need to do all that. Okay. I'm on 10B now. I'm going to practice a couple more of these and talk about frequency, and I don't have a lot of time left. Is this one factored or unfactored right now? It is unfactored. Okay, there's nothing pulled out in front of it. What is the B value? It is 1/4. So if I try to factor it out, I'm going to have -2 cosine 1/4 x, then what? If I divide a fourth off of here, it's just 1, because a fourth divided by a fourth is 1. But if I have a pi over 3 and I divide off 1/4, it's really doing what? Oh, that is just lovely. Oh, this is 4 over 1, which is 4 pi over 3. And it was minus, right? Yeah, we don't have to do this one. We're just trying to identify everything. Because it's a negative cosine, so it's upside down, and it's shifted to the right 4 pi over 3. What's the period, guys? It's 2 pi divided by 1/4. The B was 1/4, so it's 8 pi. Okay, 8 pi divided by 4 to get quarter points was 2 pi, which they added on to 4/3 over and over and over again. Okay, so if I were a fraction genius, I would know that 2 pi is really 6/3. Everybody good? And we're adding it on to 4/3. So 6 and 4 is 10/3. And 4 more is 14/3. What's happening? Okay, 8 pi is the period. Two is 6/3, isn't it? Plus 4/3 is 8/3. Oh, that should be this quarter point. Plus 4 more is 12/3. I'm getting. Is this wrong? I feel like this is wrong, like I knew this from last year. What is, okay, just answer me this. What's 4/3 plus 8? Plain old 8. Somebody do 8 plus 4 divided by 3, math, enter, enter. 8 plus 4 divided by 3, math, enter, enter. 28. Oh, it did end at 28 over 3. Okay, so I think these points just aren't labeled very clearly. This would be 10/3. Plus 4 would be 14/3. Plus 4 would... Am I doing something wrong? Okay, we're just going to move on because I'm really confused. This is 24. Divided by 4 is 6/3. Oh, because I'm supposed to be adding 6/3, not 4/3. Someone hit me. Okay, it started at 4/3, right? And now I'm supposed to be adding 6/3 to them. So 4/3 plus 6 is 10/3. Plus 6 more is 16/3. Plus 6 more is 20/3. Plus 22. Plus 6 is 28. Okay, yep. Just little mental math there. Problem. Okay, let's try this one. What are we going to factor out? When we take out a 2, we're dividing it out, so what is this shift going to become? Pi over 2. Oh, they gave us graph paper. I hate when they give us graph paper. All right, the amplitude is 3. The period is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. The vertical shift is none, and the phase shift is left pi over 2? Yes? Okay, so here's a negative pi over 2, would be 2 tick marks this way. It's a sine graph, so where does it start? The origin. Okay, the period is pi. The quarter points are divided by 4, which they've counted. Yes, this is a pi over 4. This is a pi over 4. This is a 3 pi over 4. I hate when they give us graph paper. I promise to never do this to you. It's a sine graph, so it would start here, max at 3, through 0, 0, min at negative 3. Is that true, guys, that negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2 is a length of pi? You make sense out of that? Negative 1/2 to positive 1/2 is a distance of 1, yes? And then it would go on from there. Okay, yep, I'm not liking that. I don't think I drew that part right, did I? Yeah, I did. Okay. Let's try. Okay, if I put this on a quiz, honestly, what I would tell you to do is to draw the cosine graph. It would go up 2, yes? Have a 1 above, 1 below. I would say draw your cosine graph. Then shift everything to the right, pi over 3. This is now going to be to the right, pi over 3. This used to be pi over 2. Now it's going to shift to the right, pi over 3. This used to be pi. It's going to shift on your new graph to the right, pi over 3. This used to be 3 pi over 2. Going to shift on your new graph. Everything's going to shift to the right. So just take your old points and add a pi over 3 onto everything. Graph a regular cosine graph, and then add a pi over 3 onto all of your x values. Okay, we can try that again tomorrow. I want to talk about frequency super fast. Frequency is 1 over the period, the reciprocal of the period. What is the period of this graph right here? B is a half, so the period is 2 pi divided by 1/2, or 2 pi times 2 over 1, which is 4 pi. So the frequency is 1 over 4 pi. The midline, you don't have to factor anything, mess with x. It doesn't ask, it just asks where's the midline. Yeah, the midline is the vertical shift, so it's at y equals 1. What's the period over here? So the frequency is, okay, and the midline? Yes. All right. There's a question here that it says, write an equation for a sine and model behavior sound wave associated with having amplitude of 0.1. Yep. We're not going to have time for that. 5 equals, this is question, guys. The amplitude is 2. The period is 4. How do you write an equation that has a period of 4? Phase shift to the right 1/2 would look like that. Vertical shift 4. Yeah, tomorrow is all about writing equations, okay? Tomorrow is all about writing equations. This is the assignment. It is bookwork. Oh, I have some copies if anybody wants a copy.
So, I promise.
Get through. I gotta turn this recording off.